Ladies and gentlemen, we have with us today Mr. David Atkinson. All right, so David, thanks for coming on today. First off, just tell me a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? What do you like to do in your free time? All that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, okay. I'm originally from a city in Scotland called Glasgow, but I now live in Edinburgh. I'm married, two teenage daughters, a dog called Bee, after Beyonce, and I work full time in financial services, which has absolutely nothing to do with writing, obviously. And I try and just slot that in round about my life. I suppose when I'm not working, if I'm not writing, then I'm playing the guitar and composing music or running around after my daughters, because you become a taxi driver when they hit their teens.
Okay, so financial services, that's a long shot from being an author as far as creativity, I am assuming. So how do
Yeah.
you differentiate between your work brain and your creative brain?
Um, you become adept as a writer when you can't do it full time, so squeezing it in whenever you can. So, it's an hour at lunchtime, 25 minutes, half an hour at the end of the day, or the odd evening when you've got nobody on your back. So, in a way, it's a nice escape from the reality of the day job, because the day job isn't particularly exciting. It's demanding and it's challenging, but it doesn't free up that creative side of you, which writing books and writing
Mhm.
music does.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so your novel, Future Proof, you pegged it as a time travel romantic drama crossover. So, would you say that it focuses mostly on the ideas of time travel and then kind of has the romance on the side, or is it mostly a romance novel that's kind of driven by time travel? Is like walk me through that a little
Yeah,
bit.
I would say it's a light sci-fi. The time travel is kind of a side issue compared to the general dynamic between the characters, which I think is the main driver of the book. The sci-fi is a great, just it's a great device to go back and change what went wrong between the two main protagonists, but it's light on the sci-fi and heavy on the drama, I think I would say.
Okay, got it. So, give me just a generic synopsis of the book a little bit.
Yeah, okay. It involves a man called Sam Harris, who's just coming up to his 40th birthday. He's at that stage in his life when it's not really gone the way he intended. He's living in a rented apartment that he's just about to be evicted from. He's grossly overweight, and his only companion in the world is a stuffed donkey that he talks to when he's had a few drinks, and a social worker who manages to get him onto a medical research program, which involves going back and trying to fix damaged genomes. It's part of a branch of genetics called epigenetics, which I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, and I don't in the book. But it's a real science. It's basically going back to try and fix damaged genes that happened at different parts in your life. So what happens? He gets on the medical course, and they start injecting him with this concoction of drugs that are designed to target the genome that happened at different stages in his life. But instead of actually doing that, they go back and take him back into time. But the only person that knows this is him. So he goes back in time, starts in his childhood, and starts fixing different genomes throughout his life. But what he finds is his childhood sweetheart, Lucy Lawrence, who he becomes embroiled with throughout the book. And a lot of the trips back are to trying to fix that relationship that he usually messes up, to be fair. Um, and there's lots of twists and turns throughout the book, and it's got the proverbial happy ending that you need in these books, but it's going down really well.
Okay, so that's interesting that you bring up this experimental medicine that causes the time travel. So, as far as the time travel concerned, or I guess as far as reality is concerned, is reality in your book a manifestation of one's mind, and you can literally change the past and reality through going into your mind? Like, what was your idea behind this?
The idea behind that was I was actually researching it for a different book, and I just came across epigenetics when I was looking up genetic deafness for a completely different story. And it's a fascinating area of study. It's kind of still at its infancy. But the theory behind it is that if you suffer a traumatic event in your childhood or throughout life, it leaves a marker on your genome. And the theory is that if you can go back and fix this mark on your genome, this blot, if you like, it will improve your mental health in the present. So although it's not really, the book's not really a metaphor, and it's genuinely just an idea I came up with when I was reading through that. And I thought this is a really interesting take on it. I'm not quite sure where the idea came from. I usually have a moment when I can say, well, that's where the idea came from, but I think it was just part of research. I thought that'd make a good story. And it just kind of developed from there.
Okay. So again, you've mentioned like trauma and these markers in your genome.
Yeah.
Is the time travel, would you say it's quote unquote real, as in like a book like The Time Machine, where someone literally is traveling through time? Or is this more he's going and fixing these traumas in his mind in the past? He's not actually going to the past,
No, he
but
is actually
then the
going back,
traumas are fixed.
and changing
Okay.
changing his life. It's a very specific time travel. It's specific to him. It doesn't alter an awful lot of things around about him, which is what you get a lot in time travel novels. This is very much changing his life and those close to him, rather than, he goes back and, kills Hitler or something like that. None of that happens. This is all very specific changes for him. He's very focused on fixing his own situation. So
Okay.
quite
So you
targeted,
mentioned
but it is
going
going
back
back.
and killing Hitler. Obviously, that would create quote unquote paradoxes.
Yeah.
Do you try and avoid paradoxes, or do you embrace them?
Um, the characters discuss them at one point in the book, but I'm generally trying to avoid them because you could. When I started writing it, I was away down all sorts of different avenues, and it just got a bit messy. So I took all that back and I made it very, very focused on the character going back and the people around about him, because I think that's where the strength in the story is.
Mm-hmm.
The
Got
emotional
it.
involvement with these two characters.
Okay. So you also mentioned that you wrote the music for the audiobook. So that's really cool. I love when they manage to combine their creative avenues. Did you do the reading for the audiobook as well?
I didn't do the reading. No, I got an actor to do that. Who they volunteer their service. You don't pay for them. I haven't actually paid a penny for anything on here, which is quite amazing. You go through the ACX, which is the Amazon version of audiobook, and you put your story up there, and volunteers will come and say, "Well, we'll read on that for a share of the royalties."
Okay, got it. So it's no cost up front, but then they get royalties on the back end, is what you said?
Yep.
Okay, interesting. I've never heard of that. I'll have to check that out. I like that idea. So
So
what instruments do you play? You mentioned guitar or anything else?
I play mainly the guitar. I can play some chords on the piano, but it's mainly guitar. But the beauty of being able to do everything at home on your own is I played everything because there's nobody on the clock. When I was a kid, I used to be in a band and we'd go to studios and they'd charge an arm and a leg for an hour of recording. Whereas now, because you've got a home studio and I can't really show you, but I've got instruments all around me, you have the luxury of nobody telling you've only got 10 minutes to do it. So you can actually go back and then you can record a piece with I use Logic, which is the Apple music production suite, and you can go in and change individual notes. So if you make a bum note, it doesn't really matter. You can go back later and fix it. So you can write, dozens and dozens of songs, dozens of pieces of music, and just go back and change them once you
Okay,
get the hang
that's
of it.
cool. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome. So what you mentioned again that you composed the music for the audiobook, different tracks going with different themes and different moods within the book. What would you say is the most difficult scene that you had to compose for? You don't have to give any spoilers, but why
Yeah,
was it
yeah.
difficult and what did you
The
manage?
most difficult scene was a song called I Changed the Rules, which is a part in the book when he's got together with Lucy, his childhood sweetheart. They've got married, they've had a child, and Lucy and the child get killed in a car crash. And that's the bit where I had to write the song for that, which I think is probably the hardest bit to read. The good thing about being time travel is that you can go back and fix that, but it's never quite as straightforward as you think it would be. Otherwise, it wouldn't be much fun. It wasn't just the audiobook. I actually did a whole album of songs, which were all on Spotify and Apple Music, as well as some videos on YouTube. So there are actually proper songs out there as well as just being on the audiobook.
Okay.
But I don't do any singing. I had to get, I got, because it's mainly Lucy in the story who's the musical person. It didn't feel right having I don't particularly like my voice anyway, so I got some female singers to join in and collaborate with me on that. So
That's cool. I really
yeah.
appreciate that. Going back real quick to the time travel thing. So you mentioned there are traumatic events that he can fix.
Yeah,
Once the event is fixed, does he have a recollection of the past that he used to live,
he does.
or is it just fixed completely and he doesn't even know?
No, he does know. He knows when as he goes back to where he came from in the first place, but the version of him that he leaves behind doesn't know. So he lives in blissful ignorance. But his he has all the timelines in his head, but they start to fade one by one. So the oldest starts to fade, and the only reason he remembers it is he keeps notes in a notebook, and that is the only recollection he's got of the different timelines. Because when he comes back, the last timeline begins to fade in his mind, so he can only remember the most recent one. So it takes a day or two. So he writes the notes down. So he's got a note of what they all are, but it's only like vague notes of the previous timeline. So otherwise, it
And
just
where
gets too
did
messy.
okay, and where did you get the initial inspiration for this? Because this is a very unique idea and it's very complex. It's probably not something that just came to you in a moment.
Well, there was the epigenetic thing that gave me the idea in the first place of going back and fixing different genomes. So, excuse me, for example, the first one he fixes when he's 5 years old, and the second one is roughly when he's 17, and then his 20s and his 30s. So each bit of his life where there's a damaged part of his genome is where he goes back to. So that was the inspiration behind the different parts of it. Because if you read about it, which I did, most people have about people that have suffered trauma have about 5 or 6 major genome issues, and I just picked out 6 or 7 of his and went back and did that. So that's kind of where the idea came from. The inspiration, I haven't read a lot of time travel novels, I have to say, and it's not really something that I've written before. So it was a challenge, but I found it very easy to write, I have to say.
Okay, and we always include bits of ourselves in each character that we write. So do you have too much trauma that you had to offload and put into this character, or where did you come up with these traumatic ideas?
There's probably less of me in this one than any other person I've written about. I suppose I've picked out a few bits in the childhood that are very close to me when he goes back when he's 5 or 6. But later on in life, it was just complete fiction. So there's very little of
Okay.
me in there. I think, if I'm being honest, there's quite a lot of me when I was in the book when I was 5, and there's quite a lot of me when I was 17. But after that, it's just all completely made up.
Okay, got it. So let's talk a little bit about your publishing now. So you mentioned this is the first one that you've ever self-published. Did you do traditional publishing before?
I have, yes. I started off. I'll give a bit of background. I started off writing scripts at university. Really, I didn't do a drama course at university, but I ended up doing a lot of work with the theatre people there, which was good fun. But I didn't like the scripts because you had to share it with other people, and they took your bits out and you took their bits out, and it was a bit of a war. So I was put on a secondment in 2013 at work, where I basically sat in a room all day and waited for some computer system to fire up, which it never did. So I'd spend 6 or 7 hours a day sitting doing not very much. So I thought I could write a novel while I'm sitting here. So I did. And it was called Love Bite. That was my first one. And I tried to get an agent for that, and failed miserably, like so many authors do. So then I started sending it out to small publishers that would accept submissions. And 3 got back to me, which was quite a surprise, and asked for the manuscript. One, which I can't remember the name of, and turned me down. Another one called Buried River Press, which were a small publisher in London, offered me a contract, which I signed. So on the back of Love Bite, I managed to get hold of an agent, or I think she called me. So we tried to sell a book, my next book, which didn't work. And then we parted company because we fell out, because she called my writing, what's the word she used? Harsh and naive, which I don't think it was, but anyway. So I started again, back to the beginning, trying to get an agent, trying to get small publishers to take me on, and I actually got an offer from an imprint of HarperCollins, which was really lucky. And so they took me on, and the book was called the Second Life of Nathan Jones, which is a bit of a mouthful because that wasn't the original title. They made me change an awful lot on that, which, the experience of working with someone like HarperCollins is it's a real awakening because they've got all these people doing so many different things. And everyone gets their fingers in it, and it just ended up completely different from what I wanted it to be. And it did okay, but I don't think it was the book it should have been because too many things were changed. I wouldn't let that happen now. So I've got another book which was supposed to come out with them this year, but I haven't finished it because I've been too busy on the Future Proof book. So it should go to them by Christmas. It probably won't. And they'll hopefully put that one out in the next 6 months to 9 months. I did go to them with Future Proof, but it didn't quite fit their list at the time. They've got this list and they have kind of parameters of whether it fits and whether it doesn't. But by that time, I was on this journey of self-discovery and self-publishing and writing songs, and I kind of wanted to do it myself at that point just to see if I could, because it's a huge learning curve. And so taking that journey, to use that American Idol speak, it was good for me to do that because I had to edit everything. I had to get beta readers. I've got a wonderful beta reader called Stuart Smith who I swap manuscripts with, and he's just brilliant. And we kind of purge each other's work, and it's really, really helpful. But doing the editing, I've never sat down and edited a script like that before. So I released it in January along with the songs. And I didn't really know what I was doing. The problem with being an author on your own is all the marketing and promotion, and it's very, very difficult to get traction because no one's really interested in you because you're a self-published author, even though I had a bit of a history. So I just put some posts on Facebook, dropped it into some reading groups here and there, and there was a couple of book bloggers that I sent it to who pushed it, which was really helpful because I think if they hadn't done that, it wouldn't have gone anywhere. So year to date, it's got, I just looked about 10 minutes ago, it's got 793 ratings, of which 763 of them are 4 and 5 stars. So,
yeah,
it's doing, for a self-published book with not a lot of promotion behind it, it's doing pretty well.
Yeah, I did notice that, and I was going to say it seems like you've been pretty successful with this book, which is, I think the approximate math is 2% of your sales, 1 to 2% put ratings up. So you've done really well for yourself on this. What would you say is the biggest difficulty between trying to go between self-publishing and traditional publishing?
It's the support you get. The support network at somewhere like HarperCollins is huge. I saw a big difference going from where I was before to HarperCollins. It's like a different class. I've been down to the office once, and they've got editors, they've got critiquers, they've got people who just wander around designing covers all day, and they all sit and eat a lot of cakes as far as I can see, but they have this huge machine. So I went to the HarperCollins summer party a couple of years ago, and there's people like David Walliams and Kate Beckinsale and all these people hanging around. It's just huge what they've got. It's the massive support network. When you're on your own, it's just you doing absolutely everything, and that's the hardest part because most writers are not naturally good at marketing or promoting because they're completely different disciplines. And learning that side of it is the hardest. It's really tough, moving from doing all the editing, all the stuff, and then you think, right, okay, now I've got to try and promote this damn thing.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say has been the biggest key to your success as a self-published author? Would it be just writing a good book, or is there luck involved to get it out, or did you undertake some marketing strategies? Walk me through that.
I think the first thing is writing a good book. If the book's rubbish, it doesn't matter how much marketing and effort you put into it, people won't like it. The key seems to be to keep it in the top 20, 25 in its genre on Amazon. So mine kind of fits in time travel, romance, metaphysical and stuff like that. And it's been sitting in the top 20 on and off for 8 months. And if it's in there, if it's in the top 20, people see it. So if someone is reading a time travel novel, they'll look down the list and see what else is on there, and they'll see your book and they think, all right, okay, I'll have a look at that one. That is the main strategy. And the only way to do that really is to run some Amazon ads, which I did. run a few promotions just to keep it up there. But mainly it's just down to, I think once you're in that zone, Amazon's algorithms kick in to try and help keep you there, because they think, well, this is selling quite a lot. So I don't understand how it all works, if being honest. But once you hit that point and that people are still buying it, I think I average about, it's not a huge amount, it's like 10, 12 sales a day, which doesn't sound a lot, but aggregate for Amazon, that puts you in the top. Now on the ebook, that puts you in the top 3,000 or 4,000 out of the, I don't know, 10 million books that's on there. So the key is keeping that algorithm up. And if you see it dropping, then I maybe run a small ad or something. The good thing is when the book starts generating some sales, it generates some money, so it kind of pays for itself. Because I've not paid any money out of myself to do this. It's all come from the book. Because when I set out to do this, one of my key things was not to spend any money at all. I know that sounds a bit crazy, but I just set that as a goal because I thought I could spend thousands on this. And I thought I'm just going to spend absolutely nothing. See what happens.
Okay. And if you had to choose, because I'm assuming you're going to continue to write. So for your next book, will you try to get it traditionally published, or will you go with self-publishing again?
The next book probably will be traditionally published because I've got a contract with HarperCollins to deliver that. So I have finished it. I just need to tidy it up. So that will go out with them probably next year. But I'm also going to do, because Future Proof I wasn't planning on writing a series of it, but because it's doing quite well, there is some... There's because he wasn't the only person on this trial. There was 5 or 6 other people whose stories haven't been told. My plan is to go and tell their stories to make a series out of it. Although that wasn't my original intention, but it's become an option, I think, because people are saying you're going to do another one. Well, yeah, I probably will now.
Awesome.
So that will hopefully happen 24, 25.
Okay. Did you want to read an excerpt from your book today?
Yes, I can. I've got one handy. I'll give you a flavour where we are. Each chapter is headed up with, because there's a lot of music involved in the book, each chapter is headed up with a song title. If it's one of the songs that I've written, that title's in there, but most of the time it's another one. This is just the stage of the book where he is going back for the first time into his 5-year-old self. Which I think is quite a good place to start because it gives you a flavour for what it'll be like. So this is chapter 6 and it's called What I Go to School For. From the fogginess surrounding my brain, I heard my name being called. I opened my eyes and looked up. Sam Harris, I can see you're here. Are you sleeping? I blinked a few times and shook my head, trying to clear my thoughts. Oh, so you weren't sleeping. Kids' laughter rings in my ears. What happened to the doctor? Where the hell was I? A stupid question, it being obvious as I looked around, my primary 1 class with Miss McFarlane staring at me. How did I get here? I asked, bewildered. I assumed you walked, Sam, like you do every day, said the teacher. Gales of laughter from my classmates. This isn't right, I told Miss McFarlane, who looked 24 years old. You should be retiring soon, not standing there looking pretty. I'd actually forgotten how pretty she was. Or perhaps my 5-year-old brain hadn't appreciated it back then. What's not right? Miss McFarlane asked. A smile had left her face, replaced with concern. She walked over to my desk. I looked down and realised how tiny my hands were. My body, too, had shrunk. I looked up into Miss McFarlane's soft brown eyes. I'm tiny, I mewed. She smiled at me. I remember her being a kind teacher. Of course you're tiny. You're 5. I'm not. I'm nearly 41. Everyone roared with laughter again. Even the teacher giggled. Can I just say, Sam, I hope that when I'm 40, my skin is as smooth as yours. Then I realised with a jolt that I must be dreaming. It came as a complete relief, and whilst everything felt so real and solid, I postulated it might be down to the amber gunk that had been in the syringe that had been injected into my arm. It must have some hallucinogenic qualities. The doctor never mentioned that, but maybe she thought it would put me off. I smiled up at my teacher. This might be fun. A 5-year-old kid with a 40-year-old brain. A bemused expression drifted across the teacher's face. She reached down and put her hand on my forehead. You don't feel hot, Sam, but maybe you should go along to the nurse just in case. I shook my head. I'm fine, honestly. I'm probably just tired. A coffee would perk me up. My teacher scoffed. I'm sure it would, Sam, but all you'll be getting in here is your milk at 11 now. If you don't need to go to the nurse, then if you don't mind, I'll get back to teaching. Be my guest, I smiled. She shook her head at me and walked back to the front of the classroom, glancing back at me a few times. Whilst she finished reading through the register, I took some time to check out the rest of the classroom. It certainly felt very authentic. My subconscious mind had reconstructed the room in an incredible amount of detail. The blue dragon mural on the wall near the door, that every kid in the class had contributed to, was clear and stood out in my mind. My effort near the rear of it consisted of some blue scales with the names of my family on them. On the back wall were some poorly drawn pictures of houses, except the one by Beth Graham. Her cosy cottage seemed extraordinarily good for a 5-year-old. I remembered Beth now, with brown hair and mousy features, but she was brilliant at drawing. She moved away to London at the end of primary 3, and I wonder what happened to her. Just to the left of me sat Danny McAdam, who habitually peed himself every morning. I wondered if he'd do it yet. I looked under his desk, but there was no telltale puddles. Then I spotted her, Lucy Lawrence. She sat 2 rows in front of me, her back to me, but I'd know that dark mane of hair cascading over her shoulders anywhere. I remembered her face so well. Excuse me. Little button nose and lovely red lips always looked as if they had lipstick on. But her eyes were her most memorable feature, eyes of amber, glowing like some otherworldly, ethereal creature not of this earth. I'd never seen eyes that colour before and never would again. I suppose she'd been my first crush, but I wouldn't have known what those feelings were back then. But strangely, I could feel it now, a vague longing inside my tiny body. I wondered when she and I last had a playdate. Miss McFarlane finished her registration and handed out photocopied pages from a book called Ben the Badger. "Now, class," she announced, "I'm going to read the first few pages. Try and keep up if you can. Then I'll work with you on the tricky words." Well, this seemed a bit much for a primary 1 class to cope with, if you ask me. I wondered about the date. I put my hand in my pocket to pull up my mobile, but of course, these were different times, before mobiles took over the world. Anyone who owned a mobile phone just now would be pulling it about on a trolley. No watch on my wrist either. Thankfully, the teacher had written the date, Tuesday the 17th of March, on the board. That meant I'd been in school for 6 months. I smiled as the usual suspects raised their arms. Beth, of course, and another girl from the posh estate whose name escaped me. I never understood why our parents didn't send her to private school. And of course Susan, with the unironed uniform way too small for her, always untidy, dirty looking and a little smelly. Her mum had mental health issues. Not that I knew that then, but with my 40-year-old brain engaged, I could see the reality now. Poor lamb, the stick she got from the other kids, me included. And I should know better given the treatment I'd been subjected to. Miss McFarlane ignored the raised hands and said, "Sam, how about you?" I glanced up from my musings. About me what? Laughter from the kids and a smile from the teacher. At least I was amusing everyone today. "How about you read page 3 to everyone?" I shrugged. "Yeah, okay." Miss McFarlane cocked her head to the left, puzzled. I hated reading aloud to the class back in the day, as I wasn't a very good reader, which is why I used to get picked, of course. But I shouldn't have any problems today. I pulled the photocopied sheets of grainy paper towards me, selected page 3 and began to read. "Ben likes his bed. His bed is soft. Ben likes his bed." Miss McFarlane stared at me. "Well done, Sam, you made that sound easy." It had been easy for a 40-year-old who'd been reading for a long time. I didn't say that, though, because that would spoil things. "Now," said Miss McFarlane, "can anyone tell me interesting facts about badgers?" The usual hands shot up. "Beth," said Miss McFarlane. Beth beamed. "Badgers only come out at night." "That's right," said the teacher. "Badgers are nocturnal." Miss McFarlane gazed around the classroom. "Who else can tell me something interesting about badgers?" "Sam," she said, fixing her eyes on me. "What do you know about badgers?" I paused for a moment, but in the end I couldn't resist. I said, "They've got very smelly arses, miss."
You deserve clapping for that. So one thing I noticed, it was a very engaging excerpt, by the way, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
I feel like there was a lot of humor in that scene particularly. Would you say that there's a lot of humor throughout the book, or is it just that particular scene because he's going back the first time?
There's some humour in the book. I think it's quite dark humour in the book because there's quite a lot of drama in there. So I think dark humour would be a better description, particularly in the middle section when there's some more serious stuff going on.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, before I let you go, final question. What message do you want to give to the readers?
I think the book for anyone who wants to read something that's got some really, really good characters who will stay with you when you finish reading the book. That's the main thing. I'm a very character-driven author. The characters mean more to me than anything else. I don't do big descriptions of places and furniture and times. It's all focused on the people. So if you like character-driven stories, you'll love this.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you for coming
Thank
on,
you.
everybody. David Atkinson.
Thanks very much.
Yeah.